Alan Dahl, 1915 to 2014, is one of the most influential political scientists of the 20th century, renowned for his contributions to democratic theory. His book Democracy and Its Critics, published in 1989, represents a culmination of his lifelong work in understanding and defending the principles of democracy, while addressing the criticisms and limitations of democratic governance. In this work, Dahl seeks to provide a rigorous conceptual framework for democracy and to engage with both theoretical and practical objections to it. The book remains a cornerstone in modern political science and democratic theory. 1. Background and purpose of the work. Dahl's intellectual career focused on pluralism and the functioning of democratic institutions. In Democracy and Its Critics, he set out to systematically respond to critiques of democracy from multiple perspectives, including elitist theory, Marxist critiques, and proceduralist critiques. His primary aim was to defend a model of democracy that is realistic, pluralist, and sensitive to both institutional design and political culture. Dahl's approach is empirical and analytical. He does not idealize democracy, but seeks to understand the conditions under which it can function effectively. Dahl identifies two central challenges to democracy. First, the problem of inclusion, ensuring that all members of a political community have equal opportunity to participate, and second, the problem of effective governance, ensuring that collective decisions are made in a manner that reflects public preferences while maintaining stability. His work seeks to balance these competing demands without resorting to undemocratic shortcuts or theoretical abstractions detached from real-world politics. 2. The concept of polyarchy. A central concept in Dahl's democratic theory is that of polyarchy. Dahl introduced this term to describe real-world systems that approximate democracy, acknowledging that no state perfectly embodies democratic ideals. Polyarchy is defined by two key dimensions: contestation and inclusiveness. Contestation refers to the presence of competitive elections, freedom of expression, and pluralism, while inclusiveness relates to the extension of political participation to as many citizens as possible. Dahl argues that polyarchies, though imperfect, represent the most practical and achievable form of democracy. Unlike utopian models of democracy that require direct participation by all citizens in every decision, polyarchies allow for representation and delegation while maintaining accountability. By focusing on polyarchy, Dahl bridges the gap between normative democratic theory and the empirical realities of political life. 3. Criteria for democratic governance. Dahl develops a set of criteria to evaluate the quality of a democracy. These include 1. Effective participation. Citizens must have adequate opportunities to express their preferences through discussion, debate, and voting. 2. Voting equality. All citizens' votes should carry equal weight in influencing decisions. 3. Enlightened understanding. Citizens should have access to information and resources necessary to make informed decisions. 4. Control of the agenda. Citizens must have the ability to influence the political agenda and determine which issues are considered for collective decision-making. 5. Inclusion of adults. All adult members of society should have the right to participate in the democratic process. These criteria are designed to operationalize democratic ideals in a way that is empirically measurable and applicable to real-world governance. Dahl emphasizes that achieving these standards is an ongoing process rather than a static condition, reflecting his pragmatic approach to democracy. 4. Addressing critics of democracy. Dahl systematically engages with the main critics of democracy. One prominent critique comes from elitist theorists who argue that political power is inevitably concentrated in the hands of a few, and that widespread participation is impractical or even undesirable. Dahl acknowledges that elite influence is a reality, but contends that democratic institutions can mitigate its effects through transparency, accountability, and institutional checks. Polyarchies allow for multiple centers of power, ensuring that no single elite can monopolize decision-making. Another criticism Dahl addresses comes from Marxist perspectives, which argue that economic inequalities undermine political equality and thus democracy itself. Dahl agrees that material inequalities can constrain democratic participation, but maintains that political institutions can, at least partially, offset these disparities through policies that promote inclusion, such as universal suffrage, education, and civil liberties, democratic systems can work to reduce the gap between formal political rights and actual influence. Dahl also engages with proceduralist critiques, which focus on the mechanisms of decision making rather than normative ideals. Critics argue that majority rule may suppress minority interests or that certain institutional designs are inherently inefficient. Dahl responds by advocating for institutional arrangements that combine majority rule with minority protections, such as proportional representation, federalism, and judicial review. These mechanisms, he argues, enhance both the legitimacy and the functionality of democratic governance. 5. Democracy and pluralism. A key contribution of democracy and its critics is Dahl's defense of pluralism. Pluralism holds that power is distributed among a variety of groups and interests rather than concentrated in a single authority. Dahl's vision of democracy is inherently pluralist. Political decisions emerge from negotiation, competition, and compromise among diverse actors. This approach contrasts with centralized or authoritarian models, which suppress dissent and limit participation. Pluralism also allows democracy to adapt to social and economic changes. By enabling multiple interest groups to articulate their preferences, polyarchies create a dynamic system in which governance is responsive to citizens' needs. Dahl emphasizes that this responsiveness is not automatic, but requires robust institutions, political culture, and civic engagement. 6. Limits and challenges. While Dahl defends democracy robustly, he is candid about its limitations. Polyarchies are always approximations of the democratic ideal. They may fail to fully realize inclusion or contestation. Economic inequality, social exclusion, and institutional inertia can all hinder democratic effectiveness. Dahl warns against complacency and urges continuous reform to enhance participation, accountability, and transparency. He also recognizes the tension between efficiency and participation. Complex decision-making processes that maximize citizen involvement may be slower or less decisive, while more centralized systems may act efficiently, but at the cost of democratic legitimacy. Dahl's work is valuable because it acknowledges these trade-offs and provides a framework for balancing competing values. 7. Influence and legacy. Democracy and its critics has had a profound influence on political science and democratic theory. Dahl's framework has guided scholars in analyzing electoral systems, civil liberties, institutional design, and political participation. His empirical approach, combined with normative sensitivity, has made his work applicable to both established democracies and emerging political systems. Dahl's emphasis on polyarchy has shaped debates on the feasibility of democracy in large, diverse societies. Scholars and policymakers have drawn on his criteria to assess democratic quality, identify deficiencies, and propose reforms. His acknowledgement of practical constraints and the need for continuous improvement has helped create a realistic, adaptable model of democratic governance. Conclusion. In Democracy and Its Critics, Robert Dahl offers a comprehensive, pragmatic, and pluralist vision of democracy. By introducing the concept of polyarchy, establishing clear criteria for democratic governance, and systematically addressing criticisms, Dahl provides both a theoretical and practical framework for understanding democracy. His work highlights the importance of inclusiveness, contestation, and pluralism while acknowledging the limitations and challenges inherent in democratic systems. Ultimately, Dahl's contribution lies in his balanced approach. He defends democracy not as an idealized form of government, but as a practical, achievable, and continuously improvable system. Democracy and Its Critics remains essential reading for anyone interested in democratic theory, political science, or the ongoing project of creating more inclusive, responsive, and resilient democratic societies. By engaging with both theory and empirical reality, Dahl bridges the gap between normative aspirations and the practical functioning of democratic governance, leaving a legacy that continues to inform scholars, policymakers, and